Okay, there we go. Good evening, everybody. It's a meeting of the Princeton Mayor and Council. It is June 27th, 2022. Welcome to our meeting. And we'll start with our meeting statement.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you. Could we have the roll call, please?
Ms. Perrone-Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang? Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Fraga? Ms. Sachs? Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. Okay, first up, we have two sets of minutes to approve. So, David, go ahead.
I would move both of them if that's appropriate.
Yep. Is there a second to move both sets of minutes at one time?
One of them's for a closed session. There was hardly anything in it, so.
Yeah. So this is, I need one of the other three council people to second David's motion.
I think I have to abstain because I was not in attendance on March 1st.
A second.
Okay. All right. So Leighton's got a second. All right. So, okay. So I'm sorry. You weren't in attendance at one. David, let's do them one at a time then.
Okay,
Thank you.
so March 1st, I guess, is the first one.
Okay. All right.
Second.
Leighton, you're still going to second that. So moved and seconded. Any questions or comments on the March 1st minutes? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. So we have three ayes, Leighton, Mia, and David. Any nays? And abstentions? And Michelle abstains from that one. Okay. Dawn, we're okay on that? You got that one?
Yes, thank you.
No, thank you. And would someone like to move the March 3rd minutes? Leighton, thanks. Mia's got the second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, that's all four ayes. Thank you very much. How about if we do announcements and reports? Council members with announcements or reports? Michelle?
I want to make an announcement about the Economic Development Committee. This is going to come up later in the agenda, but I would like to say that I just want to put a big shout out to the members of that Economic Development Committee. We're going to vote later this evening on whether or not to dissolve the committee. And the justification, of course, is that now we have the Princeton Business Partnership, which is redundant to what the Economic Development Committee has been charged with. But I really, really appreciate all the hard work and the many years of service that many of these volunteers gave. And I'd just like to mention their names. And I figured I would say this early in the night when everyone's still here, hopefully and present. So a big thank you to Kristen Applegate, Jen Carson, Kathy Cluckenbrink, Helena May, Jack Morrison, Lori Raybon, Dina Shaw, Andrew Siegel, Dean Smith, Mark Sullivan, Dorothea Van Molke, Josh Zinder, and of course, Bernie Miller. I really appreciate all the work, hard work. We work together really well, and I'm looking forward to working with you, continue working with you on the PBP. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Michelle. Let me just bring up two items real quick. One is on tonight's agenda, Resolution 22-219 was worded wrong. So there's a correction that needs to be made. So under resolutions number 5, 22-219 will not be on the agenda tonight, so we can correct that at a future meeting. The other thing is we have been, Mia and myself have been in contact with a couple people that have been paying attention to what's going on in West Windsor with the Bridgepoint development, and that is the one at the corner of, pretty much the corner of Quaker Bridge and Route 1. And I'm just going to give you a couple quick statistics on it. Overall, it's 5.5 million square feet of warehouse space, plus another 150,000 square feet of retail, 192,000 square feet of office, a 16 pump gas station, and 2 hotels. I think there were about 230 rooms or so. Phase 1 of this project is 3 million square feet of warehouse. Phase 2 is the additional 2.5 million square feet of warehouse. The people developing the warehouses are separate from the people doing the retail, office, and hotels. It's actually 2 tracts of land, but pretty much if you take Quaker Bridge Road, Clarksville Road, Route 1, and the Amtrak line, that gives you roughly the area involved. Over the course of building out this project, if it is built completely, the warehouse development will add about 1,550 new trips per day to that development. And when the other retail, office, et cetera, is built, that'll be an additional 1,800 new trips per day. Now, of course, something this size is going to take years and years to build if it's all built. Right now, they're waiting for some approval from New Jersey DOT to make a connection to Route 1 from the development, and DOT says they don't have time to address it right now. We had thought that the West Windsor Planning Board was going to have more public comment on this Wednesday evening, but at their last meeting, at the end of the meeting, they decided they had heard all the public comment they thought was going to come forward, and they closed the public comment. So we were actually hoping tonight to just get a consensus from council that maybe we should make some comment to the people in West Windsor about, hey, what's going on? Are you paying enough attention to this? So I do know that there's 80 conditions that need to be addressed by the West Windsor Planning Board in order to, as part of their final approval or not of this project. And I guess they're going to start going over all that Wednesday evening. So I have sent an email to the mayor of West Windsor today just to say, hey, I guess we can't do anything, but we were hoping to show up Wednesday night and make some comment. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with everybody. It's kind of unfortunate that they kind of unexpectedly closed the public hearing when they did. I know I had been reassured by, anyway, both me and I were under the impression due to conversations we had with people that the public hearing would still be going on this Wednesday night. So I just want to make people aware of that. We will still try to reach out to West Windsor and see if we can get a word in about our concern. I don't know that we need to have any discussion about it tonight, but just wanted to make that a point of information to everybody.
And just let people know that we're monitoring it, and we're in touch with various residents in Princeton and West Windsor residents who are also involved, and they're keeping us apprised. And we also think that Princeton residents should learn more about it, because the potential implications to Princeton are, particularly in terms of truck traffic, could be really quite impactful, to say the least. So,
thanks, Mia. Leighton.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a small note in our agenda under the Prospect Historic District on page 2, the second sentence, the word no, K-N-O-W, should be known, K-N-O-W-N. Just a small typographical error. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council announcements or reports? Okay, seeing none, let's go to public comments for items not on the agenda. We do have a couple emails, but we'll get to the public that are in this meeting first. So Adam, I see we have a hand up. Can we bring that person in, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Joe. Having an issue with the timer right now, so I'll indicate when 3 minutes is up to you.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
And just as people come in, just remember throughout the meeting when public comments made, you can just say your name, your address, and remember there's a 3-minute limit. Thank you very much. Joe?
Yes, thanks. You know, I actually want to speak on something that is on the agenda, but I'm just clarifying that you are going to allow public comment on that item. There's a correspondence on there that is addressed to me and one of my neighbors.
Yes. So Joe, yeah, Joe, that would be fine if we do it then. I also have 2 emails on that same topic, so we could do it all then.
Is there any chance that we could get moved up in the agenda?
I think you're going to be we'll be there pretty quick.
Oh, you do? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Talk to you later.
Okay. Adam, can we bring in the next person?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Michael.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. Michael Floyd, 64 Harris Road. Remembering back to, I think, late May, Josh Zinder had asked about the status of the Franklin proposed development. And there wasn't really an update other than you hope to come back in the early part of June. I was just wondering, since we're at the end of June, if there's any update on that.
I'm happy to give an update on that. Right now, there is a negotiation between the developer and the housing authority, and because this is primarily a project between the two of them, and when they reach agreement, they will reach out to the town. And obviously we're under a time constraint, but hopefully they are coming down the final stretch. And obviously I can't get into details because they're, negotiations between two parties, legal negotiations, but that's where we are.
And is it still the intention to hopefully you reach agreement, then composing an RFP for an architect? And I believe that was going to be the next step. Once you got
that will be between the two parties.
okay.
And that's sort of a level of detail that is, not, I think we're not quite to that point. Yeah.
And I trust, the deadline for submitting a 9% tax credit application, the HMFA, is August 31st.
Yeah, so this is not going to be going for the 9%. It's going to be, they're going to be using the Aspire program because that has now become a program that it's more flexible than the 9%, and there's a lot more money, so.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Mia. All right, Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Okay, next we have Rob T.
My name is Robert Martin Schreiber. I'm the chief activist of the Bayard Rustin Center for Social Justice, and we are proud to be back here in Princeton and thank the mayor and council for this opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here to speak on behalf of our center and the folks we are honored to represent, to request that the rainbow flag, now flying proudly over our fair town in honor of Pride Month, be displayed in Princeton all year round to serve as a beacon to those looking for towns, cities, and communities that are inclusive and affirming for our LGBTQI persons and their families, as well as supportive friends and allies. We were thrilled to organize the second Princeton Gay Pride Parade and after party last Saturday, where we welcomed to this town over 3,000 folks who marched in solidarity and celebration and indeed represented all our beautifully diverse communities. The gay pride flag is more than just a symbol. We have heard from many folks in the LGBTQI+ community that one of the first things they look for in visiting a new town is the number of pride flags in homes and businesses. Perhaps even more importantly, many queer folks look for these hallmarks of inclusion to help them decide whether they want to relocate their homes or businesses to a particular area. The presence of the gay pride flag indicates safety and welcome, and we know Princeton wants to be seen as a true bastion of inclusivity. While raising the rainbow flag high during Pride Month is a gesture that is much appreciated by those of us in the community who are able to witness it, we believe a much stronger and more meaningful statement can be made by flying this flag year-round as an ongoing commitment to the diversity and inclusion that the town of Princeton aspires to project. The Bayard-Rustin Center for Social Justice understands that Mayor Frieda and Town Council have to take certain steps to ensure and assure this initiative is done correctly and also with the care it deserves. We are confident all involved will make the right choice to recognize and respect the inclusivity inherent in this action. So all we ask is that whilst that due diligence is taking place, this rainbow flag is allowed to fly until a final decision is made, allowing our community to see it there and to be seen in return. Together, let's make sure we show our pride 365 days a year. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak again. Thank you for all you do for our town and our greater community.
Robert, thank you. And just so the public understands what the issue is, there's a recent Supreme Court decision that says if you allow any one flag to fly, then you have to be open to letting any and every flag that you're requested to fly also fly. So we are talking to legal counsel to just totally understand the ramifications of agreeing or not agreeing, and to what degree we can or cannot control what is allowed to fly if we make a decision on this one specific request. So I appreciate your understanding, and thanks for being here tonight and just making sure that we're all aware that the request is there, and hopefully we can with our attorneys figure out what our options are fairly soon and communicate those back to you and to any and all that are interested. So Robert, thank you very much. Okay, all right, I don't see any other hands up at the moment. Thank you, Leighton. There you go. I don't see any other hands up right now. So I think, Leighton, did I send you the email for?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could you read that one?
Yes, I will. This is from Mr. Jack Weiss, or let me say this is from, I'm sorry, Jack Weiss from Hamilton Street. Hello. Over the years, I've repeatedly struggled to give visitors to this town directions, in parentheses, GPS does admittedly help, because an important thoroughfare, Hamilton Avenue, changes names so many times. From east to west, it takes the following names: Tyson Lane, Little Brook Road, Rolling Mead Street, Hamilton Avenue, Wiggin Street, Paul Robeson Place, and Hodge Road. All of this occurs within 2 miles. Now, these are all excellent names for the street, but doesn't it totally defeat the purpose of street names if they change every 2 or 3 blocks, making the name all but useless for navigation? I think it's past time this naming scheme was unified, since Hamilton Avenue appears to be the longest stretch, the one in the center of town, and the one with the best known institutions along it. My suggestion would be to rename Tyson Lane, Little Brook Road, Rolling Mead Street, Wiggin Street, Paul Robeson Place, and Hodge Road to reflect the fact that they are all extensions of Hamilton Avenue. Regards, Jack Weiss.
Thank you, Leighton, for reading that. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. The other emails we have are for specific items on the agenda, so we'll get to those at the appropriate times. Okay, I believe our health officer is up next with a presentation on lead-based paint inspections.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try to keep this brief. Adam, I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. If you could just stand by.
Should be coming up. There it goes.
Can you see the slides or can you see notes?
See the slides.
All right, very good. All right, fair enough. All right, so good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. In anticipation for the newest lead law going into effect next month, the Department of Health and Community Services was hoping to provide a brief overview of what to expect. Our office has been tracking the new law closely, and we've been preparing to hit the ground running once the law begins on July 22nd. This evening, I'm going to begin with a brief overview of lead and its health impacts, and then we'll go into what we know about the new law. A quick refresher for everyone on lead. Lead is a toxic, naturally occurring element and heavy metal in our environment that was widely used in commercial products such as gasoline, paint, cosmetics, spices, and pottery. Although it's been banned from gasoline since January 1st, 1996 under the Clean Air Act, it may still be utilized for certain motor vehicles. The majority of human exposures we observe both in Princeton and in New Jersey and throughout New Jersey result typically from lead-based paint and or dust associated with lead-based paint. Regulations surrounding lead have changed dramatically over the course of the past half century. 50 years ago, it was first banned in residential paint in New Jersey. 6 years later, it was banned by the federal government. And in terms of action worldwide, the US has lagged behind other countries with regards to controlling lead in the environment and human exposure. Certain European countries such as Austria, Belgium, and France banned interior lead-based paint in the early 1900s, while Germany actually banned women and children from working in factories that worked with lead-based paint in the late 1800s. Eliminating or reducing exposure to lead-based paint and other associated hazards is considered a primary prevention method. Secondary and tertiary prevention methods include those regulations that incorporate screening and treatment. In my opinion, what this new law hopes to achieve is to shift that focus from screening and treatment to primary prevention, which will equate to eliminating lead hazards in homes before children are exposed to them. And unfortunately, the existing regulations that we've been working through, both in the state and throughout the federal government, requires a child to have an elevated blood lead level before we can even enter the door to do an environmental health investigation. So this law is hoping to change that. And I'll get into more detail with specifics on the law. Reducing lead in the environment through the elimination of its use in manufacturing and other processes has indeed delivered on lower childhood lead levels. Historical data has showed us that. In the late 1970s, the median blood lead level of the US preschool child was 15 micrograms per deciliter. For perspective, under those levels right now, as of today, we would have to do an immediate intervention with a public health nurse and a lead inspector. At present, the mean blood lead level of a US preschool child is less than 2 micrograms per deciliter, and fewer than 2% have a blood lead level greater than 10 micrograms per deciliter. Although the data demonstrates improvements, we continue to understand how lead disproportionately impacts individuals, specifically families of lower socioeconomic status. Individuals in lower income, older housing stock have suffered from lack of regulation to adequately remediate homes with lead-based paint. The new lead law hopes to solve something we've known for some time, that nearly all childhood lead poisonings can be prevented if identified first. In terms of what lead does to the body, lead is toxic. It's toxic primarily because it preferentially replaces other metals like zinc, calcium, and iron, things that you need in your body, in certain biochemical reactions. It interferes with proteins that cause certain genes to turn on and off by displacing other metals with the molecules. And some of this interference can cause things like elevated blood pressure in adults and even developmental delays in children. And what's most serious is that it also displaces calcium in the reactions that transmit electrical impulses in the brain, which is another way of saying it diminishes your ability to think or recall information. This is the final slide I'll show as an overview before I jump into the specifics on the law. This slide will demonstrate some of the household issues lead inspectors typically are on the lookout for when identifying possible lead-based hazards. We look for signs of deteriorating paint, which can look like peeling, chipping, chalking, cracking, or damaged paint. And then lead dust can form when it is either scraped or heated, but then also on friction and impact surfaces such as window wells, window sills, and then around doors and door frames. These will be some of the lead-based paint hazards inspectors look for under the new lead law as well. So the new law was officially signed by Governor Murphy on July 22nd, 2021. At this point, it's been referred to as a couple of different names, including the Lead Safe Certification Law, the lead-based paint inspections and rental dwellings law. Nonetheless, we'll have a final name once the regulation is released in the next couple of weeks. The law will require lead paint inspections on certain residential properties with an emphasis on doing so upon tenant turnover, meaning when there is a change of tenant, that will trigger some form of inspection to make sure that there's no lead-based hazards present. Princeton Health and Rental Housing Inspectors have attended 2 separate webinars on the new law, one hosted by the New Jersey League of Municipalities and the other hosted by the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs in conjunction with Isles of Trenton. So what are our municipal obligations? Since Princeton currently has a local agency performing these inspections or rental inspections, we must offer lead inspection services. In other towns that they don't have these inspection services, they would be allowed to hire an outside contractor. Property owners will always have the option to hire directly a New Jersey DCA certified lead evaluation contractor, which would relieve the municipal inspector from performing a lead inspection at that property. That contractor would just have to submit the final findings to our office. The type of inspection performed is defined by the severity of the municipality's elevated blood level rate in children. And I'll touch on this again in a few slides more specifically. If lead-based paint hazards are found on the property, the owner shall remediate in accordance with New Jersey's lead abatement code, which falls under New Jersey DCA. If no hazard is found, or if the unit's been certified as lead-free by a lead evaluation firm, the landlord or owner will receive a lead-safe certificate, which is valid for 2 years. DCA, the good news is with the increased funding for the lead program, DCA is authorized to provide financial assistance up to 100% of the costs of the lead hazard control work through the Lead Hazard Control Assistance Fund, including lead evaluation and relocation costs at $150,000 maximum per unit. The law also prohibits the DCA from requesting or requiring a property owner to disclose social security numbers of any person renting the property or otherwise associated with the property, which is obviously intended to protect the tenants currently occupying each rental dwelling and to make sure that the inspections are happening without bias. Our other responsibilities include maintaining a record of all dwellings, which incorporate inspection schedules, the results, tenant turnover, lead safe certifications issued, and lead-free certifications issued pursuant to the lead abatement code. We'll also be required to investigate if, in fact, property owners fail to comply with the requirements of the law. If a property owner fails to comply, they'll be given 30 days to cure any violation. If they're not cured after 30 days, they could be subject to a penalty of not to exceed $1,000 per week until the required inspection or remediation efforts have been initiated. So what do property owners have to do? If lead-based paint hazards are identified, the owner of the dwelling shall remediate the hazards through abatement or lead-based paint hazard control mechanisms. They also must report all tenant turnover activity to the municipality, which will assist in our ability to conduct timely follow-up and maintain accurate records. And then as they've done, landlords are required to provide the lead-based paint and rental dwellings document, but now they'll also be required to provide a copy of the lead safe certificate that they've received through a result of these inspections. There are certain properties that are exempt. Those that will require inspections are all single family, 2-family, and multiple dwellings. Those multiple dwellings will be those of 3 units or more, and these likely will be performed by DCA inspectors. It's been somewhat unclear through the presentations provided, so we hope that once the final regulations or the administrative code is released, we'll have that. Exempt properties include dwellings constructed during or after 1978. Again, that was the year lead paint was banned federally. In dwellings that have been certified to be free of lead-based paint in accordance with New Jersey's lead abatement code. In dwellings with valid lead safe certification valid for 2 years. In seasonal rental dwellings, which include dwellings rented for less than 6 months each year by tenants that do not have consecutive lease renewals. And in multiple dwellings that have been registered with the DCA for at least 10 years and no outstanding lead issues. So the law breaks down what type of lead-based paint inspection, as I mentioned earlier, being performed based upon a municipality's current childhood blood lead levels. So for municipalities with less than 3% of children tested, 6 years of age or younger, having a blood lead level greater than or equal to 5 micrograms per deciliter, the inspection may be carried out through visual inspection. And the idea behind this is that if the housing stock, for the most part, has had a low incidence of lead-based paint or lead hazards associated with it, a visual inspection should do. For municipalities with a greater than that 3% tested, they would be required to perform dust wipe sampling. Princeton currently has the less than 3%, but more specifically, that number is below 1%. Therefore, we would be performing the visual inspection method unless Princeton decided to go with the dust wipe method, which is allowable under the law, but there are some things we've got to think about before we go that direction. All rental dwelling units must be inspected for lead-based paint within 2 years of the law going into effect on July 22nd, or upon tenant turnover, whichever is earlier. So that means that all rental dwellings that were included in the slide that I just mentioned will need to undergo a visual inspection by July 22nd, 2024. After initial inspection, all units shall be inspected for lead-based paint hazards every 3 years, or upon tenant turnover, again, whichever is earlier. And then, as I mentioned in a previous slide, inspection is not required if the owner has a valid lead-safe certificate. Under the law, municipalities are required to charge the dwelling or landlord a fee sufficient to cover the cost of inspection. And this is something that we're going to have to do a little bit more research on to see what the market rate is for this. Again, it's going to be a new inspection under the law in terms of what's required. And then on top of that, in addition to that fee, the municipality must assess an additional $20 per unit inspected, which shall be deposited into the Lead Hazard Control Assistance Fund via the state of New Jersey. Once the final regulation, again, the DCA has to release the New Jersey Administrative Code, which is essentially our operations manual. The law sets the administrative code. Once we receive that, we are hoping to create a special resource center on the municipal website for landlords and property owners, so they will know what we know up to date. And then to better understand what a visual inspection is versus dust wipe sampling, visual inspection is just what it sounds like. We look at all painted building components and we look for those signs of deteriorated paint, as I mentioned earlier. Dust wipe sample is collected by wiping what is defined as a representative surface to determine if lead dust is present. So again, if lead-based paint hazards are found, there's two primary methods to address them. Interim controls, which are typically used on non-friction and impact surfaces and serve to temporarily reduce human exposure through cleaning, repairs, maintenance, painting, or ongoing monitoring for lead-based paint hazards. Lead abatement is oftentimes used on friction and impact surfaces, and its purpose is to permanently eliminate the lead-based paint hazards. We see lead abatement on windows, doors, things that rub against each other that could potentially release the lead dust. The law requires that upon completion of correcting any lead-based paint hazard identified during the visual inspection under this law, we would be required to do a follow-up inspection to make sure that the hazard no longer exists. And then lastly, just in speaking with staff, we've identified some barriers with regards to the law going into effect within the next month. The first is, as I mentioned, with the dust wipe samplings, there's an issue that could present itself based upon what the capacity is. Only certain accredited laboratories are able to process these wipes, and they all have limitations depending on what the industry's capacity is and how they can increase with the new law. And how many dust wipe samples come in as a result of the law. So if we do decide to go the dust wipe sampling route, it could result in some backlog with regards to results. And then, as mentioned in previous slides, although the law goes into effect next month, municipalities are still awaiting regulations for the law, which will provide more detail on how the law will be completely implemented. And then at that time, as a town, we can review what we may or may not want to incorporate into our own local ordinance, which outlines the fee structure for lead paint inspections. And related to this, model ordinances sometimes are difficult because they don't always fit every municipality. However, they do provide a framework. And at this point, there's been no discussion over the model ordinance. So we're just trying to stay uniform with some of our neighboring towns. So our lead-based paint inspections are similar in shape. And obviously the fee structures are relatively similar. And lastly, in closing with some next steps, the health department and the Bureau of Rental Housing are working on outreach materials, as I mentioned, through the website, and then also looking to utilize the rental housing listserv for property owners to get information out regarding the new lead law. The good news is, even though the law goes into effect July 22nd, the priority is going to be finding out about tenant turnover and then how those inspections are going to take place. But those would be the first inspections to take place. We're also hoping that we can utilize digital applications and certifications for convenience sake, and then tracking when we go out into the field. And then once we do receive the administrative code, we'll be working on the local ordinance to try to set a reasonable fee structure for those inspections. So at this time, I know I've taken up too much of your time at this point, but I just wanted to provide an overview before the law went into effect and put it on your radar in case you've heard about it anywhere else. If there's any questions at this time, I'm really happy to take them, although without seeing the finalized regulations, there might be some limitations to what I can and can't answer at this time, but I'll do my best.
Okay, Jeff. David's got a question. Jeff, there you go. Thanks. David?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a question. I noticed that one of the exemptions is for housing that may have been built before 1978, but has received a sort of a lead-free certification. And I'm curious whether you know what's involved with that, and whether that's something that we can be educating our landlords and homeowners to be aware of, because it's quite possible that there are homes that were built, 80 years ago that have been completely repainted, with all the old lead paint removed. And rather than having to get, I guess, re-inspected every 3 years, when there may not be any lead there at all to begin with, it would clearly be preferable to not have to do the inspection. So.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's a great question. In that case, what the individual would do, so if it was a rental, what the property owner would do, they would have a lead evaluation contractor do a lead-based paint hazard evaluation. And if they deemed it to be lead-free, they would actually create a certificate that said this property is lead-free, and then that would be provided to each tenant. And they would not have to go through the 2 to 3 year inspection cycle through us.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so Jeff, you'll keep us updated, and as clearer regulations or suggested stuff comes out, you'll let us know what we need to do to help you have everything in place to enforce.
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening.
Welcome.
Take care. All right, next up on the agenda, Special Improvement District budget. We have 3 items under there. The first one is 22-180, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton. 1, introducing and approving the 2022-2023 budget of the Princeton Special Improvement District. 2, directing the municipal clerk to publicly advertise the budget and schedule a public hearing. And 3, directing the tax assessor to prepare an assessment roll of properties within the district based upon the budget. And tonight is the public hearing. So can we get that moved and seconded, and then we'll get into comment?
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to move that, but there's a little bit of a.
Let me just get a second.
Yeah, Mayor, hold on. From my understanding,
Yeah.
this one we're not
Exactly.
voting on because there's an amendment.
Yeah.
So from my
Thank you.
understanding, it should be, you're welcome. This shouldn't be voted on at all, and 22-213 would be the resolution to vote on.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to ignore.
We're going to ignore
Number
the
one.
first one, I think. Yeah, Frank, is that correct? I just wanted to double check that was what we were doing.
Okay, all
Good
right. So
call, Frank, but yeah. Yeah.
everyone will ignore my prior comments for the last 2 minutes, and instead you'll pay attention to 22-213, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton adopting and ratifying the amended 2022-23 budget of the Special Improvement District of the Municipality of Princeton. Michelle, I'm going to assume you're still going to move that.
I will.
And David, your second still holds.
Yep.
And council comments, and then we'll get to public comments.
And may I ask, please, for Aubrey Haynes to be brought over as a panelist?
Yep.
Aubrey and I will just give very brief background presentation. And Aubrey Haynes is the president now of the Princeton Business Partnership, which is the name of the Special Improvement District. So Aubrey, if you want to, when you're here, take it from the top. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you, everybody, for your consideration for this, to pass the budget of the Princeton Business Partnership. When COVID hit, COVID acted as a catalyst to finish off businesses that were already weakened by e-commerce and big box retail. The impacts of COVID shutdowns threatened all the businesses, and quick action of this council made a big difference to keep many of those businesses in Princeton afloat. Nevertheless, there are more retail vacancies in Princeton than I have seen in my entire 35-year career in the commercial real estate business. Almost 2 years ago, we formed a steering committee to determine the best way to return vitality to the commercial districts in Princeton. The result is the Princeton Business Partnership, a special improvement district. The business and property owners have essentially decided to impose a tax on ourselves in the form of an annual assessment. The budget of the PBP is the subject of your deliberations this evening. This revenue source will enable the Princeton Business Partnership to invest in commercial districts around Princeton. Improvements that are budgeted for this year and future years will enhance the experience of all visitors and residents who come to town. The budget represents the priorities of the PBP board, and as you can see, marketing and events are a big priority. We all know why Princeton is such a terrific place. We want more people to know about the cultural venues, restaurants, places to stay, play, and shop. We need to find ways to get them into town and find parking efficiently. When they get here, they should be excited by their experience. They should gain an appreciation for the unique qualities of this, the best town in New Jersey. People can choose to live anywhere in this mobile post-COVID world. Princeton is really well situated to benefit from the sea change. The board of the PBP, which includes Michelle and Mark, and the top leadership of property owners and businesses in the community, will carefully steward the resources of this organization. We will make sure to coordinate with public investments that are being made in the town. With this budget, the Princeton Business Partnership will carefully and thoughtfully craft a message and a plan for replenishing the vitality of Princeton. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aubrey. And I just have a few remarks. So this budget is a reflection of the work plan that the PBP has created. There are four main areas, as you can see in the budget, that have been identified: economic development, streetscape, administration, and marketing. Under economic development, the objectives include attracting and retaining a diverse mix of commercial tenants and retention of existing tenants, creating a database of vacant commercial space and prospective tenants, and creating a mechanism for sharing information with property owners. It also includes building strong ties between the PBP and the town, county, state, and other civic organizations, educational organizations, where we all will work together to streamline processes which currently restrict the expansion of existing businesses and new business startups. Economic development also includes working together in transportation, parking, and traffic improvements, to name a few. Under marketing, there are several goals, including attracting new customers, enhancing resident customer loyalty, increasing foot traffic and sales, and increasing overall tenancy both for commercial and commercial residential properties. These include retail promotions, seasonal events, other traffic generating, and customer loyalty promotions. Marketing also includes creating a strong brand and general branding strategy that promotes our town's unique historic and cultural characteristics. For streetscapes, the goal is to improve and enhance the visual impact of our town's commercial zones. Plans such as streetscape beautification, placemaking projects, enhancing public area cleanliness, maintenance, appearance, and generally helping to inform decisions by working with the municipality. It also includes working with the town to improve and enhance the pedestrian experience, such as improvements in street crossings, directional signage, maps, pedestrian lighting, and so on. Under the administration, our first goal is to hire an executive director to run all of these programs and coordinate among these many committees all the volunteer work. Another important goal is to create a database of all the property and business owners that includes their email, addresses, contact information, and phone numbers. The executive director will oversee the execution of the budget with key performance indicators that will be periodically reviewed. And under administration, the executive director and administration committee will identify grants and other funding opportunities to enhance the budget as needed. So that's the summary. And
Okay, why don't we get to,
that it.
yeah, okay, so why don't we get to the council questions and then we'll see if there's any public comment. David?
So I just want to get a little bit more clarity on exactly what the history is here. In reading through the materials, it sounded like the budget was originally introduced and had a public hearing in May 23rd, and that what's happening here is a reintroduction with small variations for a similar budget with some minor changes for a new public hearing. Is that understanding correct? Or did we never have the public hearing for the budget in the first time around? It was introduced in May and is now being heard with minor alterations.
Yeah, we had an introduction and this is the hearing. And our understanding is we can have the hearing without renoticing and without reintroducing it because the budget change, the amendment we're making is within the parameters. It's small enough and it's less than a certain percentage. So it's allowable. And Frank can, he's on the call, can maybe make a comment on that. But that's my understanding.
Yeah, you're correct, Councilwoman. And Councilman Cohen, you were correct. It's the latter. There was not a public hearing on May 23rd. It just introduced the budget and directed the clerk and you scheduled the public hearing for this evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other council questions or comments? Mia?
This is just a brief comment. I'm hoping that I see you have a I don't know if it's a committee or a focus on I think it was maintenance in the Central Business District, and wearing my Sustainable Princeton liaison cap, and as a former board member of Sustainable Princeton, as current chair of our Infrastructure and Operations Committee, I will say that one of the most intransigent issues that we continue to struggle with is waste, and that's recycling and composting and waste on the, in the Central Business District. And one of the, I think, reasons or a contributing factor to our inability to successfully solve this in a more effective way has been that the lack of coordination and cooperation between the businesses and people who have environmental sustainability priorities in mind for the municipality, and municipal staff who are responsible for maintaining our central business district. So this is an area that I have to say I am most excited about, beyond all the other, potential benefits that this will bring, that I know others are very excited about. This, for me personally, I think is critical. And so I'm hoping that it will be top priority right out of the starting gate for you.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's the basics, right? I mean, getting the look and the cleanliness of our town under control and working together to improve that. It's absolutely a high priority. Aubrey, you want to?
Yeah, but also taking the lead, as Princeton should, in sustainability, and having the businesses coordinate their efforts so that it's not one business that's extending themselves and not being coordinated with the other businesses. I think it's really important to work together in that effort, because I think not only is it the right thing to do, but it's also good business. A lot of the customers of the businesses demand that. Certainly our real estate tenants demand that as well.
Right. I think an important point to make is that the SID, or the Princeton Business Partnership, does not and will not provide services that the municipality already provides. Instead, they will look at providing or putting in place perhaps other things, but coordination between what they're going to do on their own and what we already do obviously is paramount in order to make all this work. So that we're all kind of saying we're all headed in the same direction. So.
Yep.
And I'm going to be checking up.
So will I.
We're going to be knocking on your door too.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Let me just see. Any other council comments or questions? If not, I'll see if there's any public comment or question. Okay. Anybody from the public wants to say anything on this item? All right. I don't see any hands up, so we'll close the public hearing on 22-213, and that's a roll call vote, please, Dawn.
Ms. Pearl Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. 22-214,
Thank
resolution.
you.
Yep. Don't
Thank
go anywhere yet.
We have one more. I have questions for you.
22-214, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton accepting the assessment role of the 2022-2023 special improvement district of the municipality of Princeton. Is there a motion on that? Leighton had his eight. No, you know what? Michelle gets the motion. Leighton gets the second, obviously. Sorry.
No
Okay.
way.
Any questions on?
Sorry, Michelle.
No worries. You
You're
could
too
later.
quick, Leighton. Any questions on this resolution by anybody, council or public? Okay. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's all. So that passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Aubrey, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks, Aubrey.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Okay. Next up, sorry, I just got to get my agenda package to the right page. Under correspondence, we had received a letter a while back from some residents asking us to consider rescinding the area in need of redevelopment designation for the Princeton Theological Seminary. So we did, after discussion with our attorneys, send a reply to that. That's in the agenda package. And just briefly, a couple points to make is that even though that designation is in place, the zoning that has been there for decades is still the same zoning. That designation does not change the zoning. The zoning would not change until a redevelopment plan is proposed, reviewed, and accepted. So that's one point. The other point that we looked at was that removing that designation would likely, not for sure, but likely end us up in court, in that removing the designation could remove value from the property, and both the property owner and the future developer, potential developer of the property, could decide that would be grounds to sue the town on. So at this point, we decided not to take any action on the request. And so the reply about that is in the agenda, and people can obviously read the entire thing. So why don't I see what, and we do have 2 emails on this, which I'll get to after we get to anyone from the public in this meeting that wants to talk on this. So Adam, I see a hand up. Can you bring that person in, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over Joe.
Thank you.
Before you start the clock, Joe Butler, 18 Hibben Road. Jack and/or Nora Kerr, do you see, are they, I know other people are trying to speak. My neighbor Karen O'Connell, there are a number of people who are trying to get on. It's
Okay.
Would you like to be on simultaneously?
no. I mean, we can be sequential. I just want to make sure. I've been getting texts that people are having trouble joining the meeting, seeing how to raise your hand, et cetera, et cetera. So
I can see those 2 hands raised.
Joe,
Okay.
and
So,
the hands raised.
great.
so there's a number of people. Yeah, the number of people with their hands up. So again, for anybody that's attending the meeting, if you want to speak, just go to the bottom of your screen. There's a function that says raise hand. Just click on that, and then we'll call everybody in the order that you clicked on raise hand. And again, as Joe did, you just say your name and your address, and hopefully our timer works and you have a 3-minute limit. So pretty easy. Joe, why don't you go ahead?
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
To clarify, we made one request on March 28th, and when 2 months passed without a response from council, we resurfaced the same request at the end of May. It's now the end of June, so it's 3 months, one request. In his letter, Mr. Regan states that because the A&R designation was made by a resolution of council, it may also be rescinded by a resolution of council. That's the legal opinion. When Mr. Regan asserts there's no real value in rescinding the designation, unquote, I'm not sure on whose behalf he's speaking. We disagree. If we had been granted the courtesy of a conversation, either publicly at council or in response to one of the many invitations we have extended to you, we could have explained why. We are taxpayers, residents, neighbors, and voters, and we believe there is value. Clearly, we don't count. Mr. Regan acknowledges that he's unfamiliar with rescinding the A&R, yet he then states that the reasons we set forth don't meet the legal standard for consideration. Again, given the opportunity, we could have offered a more fulsome support of our request, and Mr. Regan could have clarified exactly what conditions would meet the legal standard. But let me offer this warning: allowing financially sound property owners to let their properties deteriorate in order to establish blight is a dangerous precedent. The shopping center, Princeton University, and the seminary all have used neglect to their financial advantage. We have become participants in a giant charade. The town is allowing the demolition of the historic TRW campus while accepting the pretense that this will become a grassy knoll. At the very same time, the contract purchaser is talking to the press about his upcoming plans. It's simply shocking behavior by all parties, but we should expect more to come. Every property owner can read the playbook. Demolish the structures on your property as part of the contract of sale and let the new owners submit the plans. Are we really going to sacrifice the town's historic properties, the right to zone, the responsibility to residents due to fear of litigation? Apparently we are. To be clear, the town isn't concerned about a lawsuit from the neighbors. It is either the fine Christian organization or the developer that concerns the town, and that should tell everyone all they need to know about who has the power here. These 11 properties were originally intended to be developed together as a campus, a process that is envisioned in the master plan. Since only a portion of the A&R is under contract, the portion on which the seminary has neglected the structures, it makes no sense for the rest of the properties to be declared blight or an A&R. This needs to be reconsidered. Mr. Reagan's legal opinion is that the A&R could be rescinded. The decision not to even consider our request is a decision, one that should have been made in public. Choosing not to consider our request is a policy decision, not a legal one. We didn't elect an attorney for policy. Democracy dies in the darkness, and apparently on Zoom too. The lack of transparency is disappointing. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, Adam, could you bring in the next person, please?
Okay, next we have Karen.
Karen, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
All right. The A&R designation was granted in 2018 by a former council's.
Karen, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Could you just say your name and address real quick?
Yeah, I was muted when I said that part.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll start. Karen O'Connell, Hibben Road.
Thank you.
Okay. The A&R designation was granted in 2018 by a former council's resolution for 10 properties owned by the Princeton Theological Seminary. It was granted specifically for the purpose of bringing the seminary's married students onto their main campus and weaving their campus together, something the neighborhood was enthused about. The townspeople and neighbors were promised public neighborhood benefits, which we had been informed were a necessary component of an A&R redevelopment plan. Many meetings were held, and we were given the ability to provide meaningful input. A major concern overall was traffic and traffic calming, and several meetings were held on that topic alone. PTS abandoned the project in third quarter 2019 and subsequently put just 5 of the 10 parcels comprising the A&R up for sale, the properties that constitute the Tenant Roberts Whiteley campus on Stockton and Hibben. Carving an A&R into pieces and selling them off independently is effectively creating spot zoning in what is currently an educational residential historic neighborhood. If council and mayor wish to establish a new A&R for the TRW property, it should be newly considered based on the potential merits of the current situation, including public benefit and the possibility of adaptive reuse, and at the very least exclude the 5 parcels that PTS owns which are not up for sale. These orphan properties are now left in limbo, but are definitely not blighted. Council appears to be in support of the gathering of input for the redevelopment by the presumed the redeveloper's PR firm, a firm that has created anonymous focus groups with hand-selected key community members. This is not what we were told would happen by this mayor and council in October 2021, when you said that any redevelopment would be a result of collaborative effort between the neighbors, PCRD, the redeveloper, and as appropriate, PTS. We have no recourse at this point if the developer won't meet with us unless council intervenes. Unlike the first round with PTS, where your predecessors and David Cohen were proactive and worked with the community, this council appears to be taking a back seat and allowing the commercial redeveloper to lead. So he is using PTS to demolish the existing historic buildings, some dating back to the 1820s, just prior to taking ownership. This will change the character of the neighborhood and alter a principal gateway to Princeton forever without public input. It takes advantage of an obvious loophole that enables buildings to be demolished without a redevelopment plan being approved. It's an enormous concern and may soon lead to many more of our town's stately buildings, not currently designated as historic, to fall to the highest bidder for redevelopment. Princeton deserves better. At the very least, the seminary's A&R should be rescinded for the 5 parcels not currently under contract. And if council is too busy and unable to stand by their letter dated October 2021, the entire A&R should be rescinded. I would like to add that I have never met the redeveloper and do not fault him here. He is simply doing what developers do, taking advantage of every aspect of the redevelopment process. Council should do what we would hope you would do, and at the very least, mediate the situation.
Thank you, Karen. All right, Adam, can we bring in the next person, please?
Okay, next we have NW.
Hi, it's Nora Kerr. I was going to add something to what Tom Chapman was going to say. Could he go first?
Yeah, sure. We can do that, Nora. No problem. We'll come right back to you.
Okay.
Okay. Adam, could you bring Tom in?
Yes, he should be coming right over.
Thank you.
I'm unmuted, yes?
Yes, Tom, we can hear you.
Oh, very good. Thank you, Mark. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Tom Chapman, live at 14 Alexander Street, and I'm representing the Mercer Hill Historic District Association, which all of you, I think, know. I'd like to just summarize what was presented to the HPC 1 week ago, last Monday, because I think it's important that all of you hear what we said in essence 1 week ago. First, a couple of points on background. The process of preparing a redevelopment plan for the seminary that is part of the PTS area in need of redevelopment started in 2018, and that was when the town designated the A&R by legislation. The town retained a professional planner. We all know who that is, Jim Constantine of LRK, who organized a series of public meetings in charrettes. And an extensive public record was created. Many of the public concerned about implications of the redevelopment participated, as did the owner, PTS, and the developer, who was PTS. The views and advice of the Historic Preservation Commission are part of the public record. So it's important to talk about a couple of points that were made during that round one, as we refer to it. The tenant campus, which comprises the tenant Roberts Hall's Whiteley Gym, are historically and architecturally significant. The tenant campus is located within the Princeton Historic District, listed in the state and national registers of historic places. And although 5 of the 6 buildings that are under contract are not in the Mercer Hill Historic District, these buildings contribute to the Princeton Historic District and are included in the Community Master Plan as a suggested extension of Mercer Hill Historic District. The HPC strongly recommended that the tenant campus be preserved in its current appearance, fronting Stockton and Hibben. And in a follow-up memo to David Cohen, as chair of the ad hoc committee for PTS in May of 2019, HPC recommended a feasibility study on adaptive reuse of the tenant Roberts Whiteley campus and wrote that, quote, demolition presents an irrevocable loss to the community and should not be accepted without rigorous review. Many members of the public who spoke.
Hey, Tom,
Yep.
Tom, I hate to do this, but your 3 minutes is up.
Can I add one sentence?
Yes. Thank you.
We urge the town to withhold any demolition permits and engage an independent historic preservation consultant to evaluate the adaptive reuse of these buildings. Very simple request.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir. Adam, can we bring Nora back?
Yes, Mayor.
I'm on?
Yes, Nora, you are.
Hi, I'm Nora Kerr, 42 Mercer Street. And I'm picking up from where Tom spoke. Last Monday, the Mercer Hill Historic District Association spoke at the Historic Preservation Commission's meeting, reading into the record our letter objecting to the impending demolition of the buildings on the tenant campus without review. The mayor and council, you were all in receipt of this letter. But Ed Schmier, the town's attorney, stated that the HPC has no jurisdiction to review the planned demolition of the tenant campus. And he suggested that we raise our objection during this meeting tonight. The tenant campus is located at the intersection of Stockton and Hibben. The 3 principal buildings on the campus, Tenant, Roberts, and the Whitley Gym, are important historical buildings cited as warranting status as key contributing buildings to the Princeton Historic District by Watson and Henry, which were the seminary's own preservation consultants. And moreover, the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission has also submitted 3 memos to the planning board for round 1, substantiating historic and architectural significance of these buildings. The provisions of the governing state law provide that the HPC review every application submitted to the planning or zoning boards for development of properties located in historic zoning districts, as well as suggested historic districts. The tenant campus straddling Hibben Road at Stockton Street, the buildings are within the suggested extension of the Mercer Hill Historic District that is listed in the Princeton Community Master Plan. The current edge of the Mercer Hill Historic District is at 92 Stockton, at the intersection of Stockton and Edge Hill. An extension of that edge along Stockton and then parallel along Mercer would include the Hibben Road and would embrace the tenant campus buildings. In addition, there's a separate issue of the site's location along the Kings Highway Historic District, running from Lawrenceville to Kingston and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So we think PTS's application for a demolition permit indicates that there is no plan to redevelop the site, and that is nonsense. We all know that. It's an egregious 2-step strategy and a workaround of the requirements and intent of the ordinance, removing planning board review of the demolition application. It is public knowledge, widely covered in the media, that PTS is contracted to sell to Herring Properties, a commercial developer, not a nonprofit educational institution, and that Herring will take ownership of the site immediately after the buildings are demolished. We understand that this separation of demolition from appropriate and proper plan review has been done before, most recently at Linden Lane, with unfortunate consequences for the proposed historic district. We challenge the characterization that the buildings are not historic, and we strenuously object to the separation of the demolition approval from the proper and complete plan review.
Nora, thank you. Okay, let me just ask our attorney. I don't know that we had prepped him that we might ask this question, but Frank Reagan. Frank, can you just, I believe I understand what we said as far as the council really cannot, by the municipal land use statutes, get involved in requests for demolition, but could you perhaps enlighten us as to around that topic?
Well, I mean, the demolition permit, well, yeah, a demolition permit is issued pursuant to the Uniform Construction Code, and as well as other municipal regulations that exist. There's a process set forth, and that's an administrative process, based on state regulations as well as local ordinances. And my understanding, though I haven't been directly involved, in the demolition permit request for the seminary, my understanding is the property owner is following the proper process, and it's essentially an administrative review and approval that ultimately results, I believe, in an issuance of a demolition permit by the municipal construction official.
Right. Thank you. Okay.
I'm just wondering if we could ask, I think our engineer, the municipal engineer, is absent, but the assistant municipal engineer is here. Since he's been directly involved, could we ask him to comment on that?
We could ask him that. Jim, would you like to comment on that?
Sure, I can easily comment on that. The demolition permit process is a building permit process. However, in Princeton, we have a process whereby demolition of commercial properties are reviewed through the planning process only because that's the process that we put into place. We do it through an administrative waiver in order to ensure that there's a thorough review of any demolition demolition proposals that are coming through, so that we can look at items such as stormwater management, soil erosion and sediment control, the disconnection of utilities, traffic control during demolition. Haul routes are important because we have roads that are weight restricted, and we want to make sure that the demolition material, when it leaves town, does not damage our roadways. So PTS submitted a request for an administrative waiver of site plan back in April. During that review process, I personally met with a representative from PTS and some of the neighbors on site to discuss the process and discuss what we would do. The administrative waiver was granted with some recommendations on how the land should be left as not being regraded, that some of the drainage provisions that already exist should be repaired. And after the administrative waiver process, the administrative waiver is approved, there are a number of other steps that need to be done prior to a demolition permit being issued. In fact, a demolition permit application has still not been submitted by PTS. The items that need to be taken care of prior to a demolition permit being issued include the installation of soil erosion and sediment control, which has been installed, the installation of tree protection fencing. If there were to be any trees that removed, a tree removal permit would have to be obtained. There are no trees to be removed in this case. Tree protection fencing has been erected. It has been inspected by the municipal arborist. All of the utilities need to be disconnected. I am unsure whether or not all of them have been disconnected, but we would know that when the demolition permit is actually submitted. There'll be letters from the utility companies demonstrating that those disconnections have taken place. The Traffic Safety Bureau needs to review the traffic control plan and the haul route. That has been done. After that, let's see. Oh, there are also certifications that need to be obtained regarding hazardous materials such as fluorescent lights, whether or not there's any potential asbestos. There was asbestos remediation done at PTS a few years ago. So sign-offs need to be obtained for that. Pest control sign-offs as well, rodent remediation. And it's a very long and involved process. And as I said, they still have not submitted the actual application because they have to put all of that paperwork together. And once that is put together, the building department still does not issue a demolition permit until it's again reviewed by the land use engineer, the municipal arborist, and the sewer engineer and signed off on. That is a structural building permit checklist. And then it goes to the building department, and the building department may then issue the demolition permit. That's the process we have in place in Princeton for all commercial.
Thank you, Jim. All right, Adam, I see there's another member of the public with their hand up. Could you bring them in?
Yes, bringing over Brad.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, Brad.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Brad Middlecoff, 28 Hibben Road. I wanted to focus on a point that you made at the very beginning of this discussion, Mark, about the rationale behind not engaging on or not going forward on rescinding the A&R, which was a concern that if council were to do so, it could lead to litigation, in particular litigation brought by either the current landowner, the seminary, or the future landowner, the developer. And presumably that advice came through the notion of tortious interference, a third party interfering with a contract between two other parties. In this case, the contract being between the seminary and the developer. But my understanding from just a brief conversation I had with an attorney earlier today is that municipalities, state government have a defense to that kind of claim under the principle of sovereign immunity, that state, local, federal government cannot generally be sued in situations like this, or if they are sued, they have a valid defense. I was just wondering if Mark, you or anybody on this call, including Mr. Regan, could comment on whether sovereign immunity wouldn't apply here to essentially shield the town from a colorable claim of tortious interference. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Brad. Frank, can you address that question?
I guess I can address, I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm trying to get on the video, but
okay.
I can't say with absolute certainty that sovereign immunity would apply, and that's the case that Mr. Middlecoff just described, which is obviously related to the redevelopment area designation. Sovereign immunity does exist for municipalities in many instances, but I can't opine at the moment whether it would apply in this instance.
Okay. All right. So Brad, I'm sorry, we don't have a direct answer, but Frank, that is something that would be important, I guess, for us, obviously, the elected officials to know one way or the other.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll get an answer for you.
Appreciate that. Adam, I see there's another hand up. Can we bring that person in?
Yes, bringing over David.
There you
go. My name is David Shore. I live at 498 Stockton Street, Princeton, New Jersey. I'm not speaking as a member of the Historic Preservation Commission, although I've served there for almost 30 years and have heard many people come before us expressing a lot of concern about this project. But what I wanted to bring up tonight was a kind of more fundamental thing about historic preservation. One of the reasons I got into the field to begin with is about something that's talked about a lot in Princeton, and that's sustainability. There's a lot of trapped energy, materials, things in those buildings that at least warrants some sort of discussion that what's there and the possible reuse of those buildings represents quite a value. And I'm just curious about how that's going to be evaluated in consideration here as well. Thank you.
Sure, David. Thank you. David, I don't know the exact answer to your question other than to say, absent a redevelopment plan, there's really nothing for us to react to at the moment. So I guess we'll have to see what's proposed at some point in time. Councilman Cohen.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment in response to Nora and Tom's contention that these buildings are proposed for inclusion in the Mercer Hill Historic District in the master plan. I've gone back and checked this a couple of times to try and make sure that I'm right. The master plan lists about 4 or 5 buildings specifically for possible inclusion in the Mercer Hill District. The buildings on this campus are not specifically listed. And then the master plan lists about 5 or 6 streets where it is suggested that the Mercer Hill Historic District be expanded. Stockton Street is not one of those streets, and the street addresses of these buildings are Stockton Street. So I think it's a difficult case to make, that just because Hibben traverses between a couple of these buildings, that Hibben is one of the streets that is recommended for inclusion in the expansion of the Mercer Hill District. But I think it's a stretch. And if the Historic Preservation Commission or the Historic Preservation Office had actually anticipated inclusion of this campus in the Mercer Hill District, they would have said so explicitly rather than trying to ask future councils or future planning boards to read between the lines. So I just wanted to make clear that I think that, I'm very sympathetic to the historic preservation agenda. I was the liaison to HPC for my first 4 years on council. I attended UVA's architecture school, which is one of the preeminent historic preservation programs in the country. I really sympathize with the desire, but we just don't have much of a hook to hang our coat on in terms of insisting on any kind of preservation here.
Okay, David, thank you. Okay, and just before Mia goes, we have one more hand up, and then I have 2 emails to read, and then we are going to try to move on to other items on the agenda. But Mia, please go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to, I think it's Nora Kerr. And she mentioned the letter that came from council a number of months ago, which encouraged the contract purchaser and the neighbors and the Princeton Coalition for Responsible Development to have a dialogue with one another. And at the time, we specifically referenced our work in completing the affordable housing settlement and the fact that we were not able to engage directly with a full out process in developing this site, and that in fact, developing this site was not a priority for us at that time. And so we wanted the various parties to have a dialogue with one another. We would still, I think we are in the letter that we just sent, we continue to urge that. But that process, I think there was mention made of the contract purchasers. I think initial foray into dialogue was through the use of a private firm. Obviously, that would not replace a public process. There is a very elaborate public processes that are required for development or redevelopment on this site. So I just wanted to make clear that that the dialogue between whatever form of communication or dialogue takes place between the neighborhood and the contract purchaser and the seminary doesn't replace an official public process. And if the initial proposal by the contract purchaser for dialogue with the neighbors, which I think the rationale given was that the neighbors could have anonymity, but if that proposal or that option for interaction between the two is not acceptable to the neighbors, I think that they should make some alternate suggestions. And I just wanted to hold out the example of the Hun School neighborhood, in which there was another longstanding and respected institution in the town, which is the Hun School, which needed to make some programmatic changes for its property. And the neighbors on various sides and the Hun School managed to come up with a compromise and propose it to the town. There are many differences. It's not a precise analogy, but I think I would like to just take this opportunity to re-urge the neighbors and the contract purchaser to find mutually acceptable opportunities for discussing the future of the site, but also to reiterate that that doesn't replace the public process that would need to occur before redevelopment occurs. And as the letter states, there is no redevelopment plan currently in place or proposed.
Thank you, Mia. Adam, we have one more hand up. Oh, I'm sorry. Leighton, and then we'll go to the other member of the public.
Thanks, Mayor. I had to go to research and study for this entire process as well. And from my understanding, the request from the letter sent by abutting neighbors was the request to rescind the area in need of redevelopment, not so much for the historical quality of what is there. And with regard to the area in need of redevelopment, my understanding is for the municipality to hold on to that designation gives both the municipality and the abutting neighbors more control over what ultimately happens on the site, and also promotes the public communications process. So I think that, I think that's what will take us toward the future, is the continued discussion and cooperation by all three parties involved.
Thank you, Leighton. Adam, could you bring in the member of the public with their hand up, and then we'll get to the couple of emails we have on this topic.
Oh, yes, Mayor, bringing over Roger.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Roger Shatskin, 35 Chestnut Street. Like David Shore, I'm also a member of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm speaking as a private citizen, however. To David Cohn's point about the master plan suggested historic districts not including the tenant campus, I would argue that historical preservation is a dynamic field. Things change. We're talking about a plan that is 20 some odd years old. And the Historic Commission was asked by the ad hoc committee of the planning board in 2019 to specifically assess all the buildings that were not in the Mercer Hill Historic District or any other historic district. And so we did look at the tenant campus. And as has been mentioned in a couple of the memos, we did unequivocally say that we think these buildings should be preserved. And I think our fallback position is, if not preserved, look for adaptive reuse of some type. And I believe we actually suggested some preservation architects that the seminary could hire, and some grant applications that they could, if they didn't want to spend the money to do so. And I think what's been lost in a lot of this discussion is that very fact that we thought it was historic, that these buildings and the campus was historic. There's never been any real dialogue about that. We complained to the ad hoc committee at the time, 3 years ago, that they basically blew us off. And since the whole project went away, that was never addressed. But to, I guess, reiterate for the third time, we were pretty strong at the time that we thought the buildings were historic. And, in redrafting the master plan, they very well might have been included. We've seen things change. The property on Linden Street that was before the zoning board, or is about to be before the zoning board, that came before us, was not mentioned in the master plan as a contributing building in a proposed Tree Streets district, but it definitely merited discussion within that framework.
Okay. Roger, thank you. Okay, so we have 2 emails related to this topic, which I'll read. I submit the following comment to the mayor and council in reference to item 10 on the agenda for tonight's meeting. I would like to express my enthusiastic support for the redevelopment of the tenant Roberts Whiteley property pursuant to the 2018 designation of the property as an area in need of redevelopment. The existing structures on the property have clearly outlived their usefulness to Princeton Theological Seminary. The development proposed by Herring Properties will provide much needed housing, including affordable housing within walking distance of downtown. It will also convert a sizable parcel from tax exempt to taxable status to the lasting benefit of taxpayers. I do not agree with those who are voicing concerns about the redevelopment process or the project itself. A robust planning and approvals process for the site still lies ahead, with ample opportunity for public involvement. I thank the mayor and council for pursuing opportunities to revitalize our community and meet its current needs through the redevelopment of underused properties like this one, Jane Scott, 35 Battle Road. The second email, dear council, I write to lend support for the redevelopment of the seminary's tenant Roberts Whiteley campus. As pointed out so succinctly in a recent article in Tap into Princeton, quote, the buildings are old, they don't fit the needs of the current owner or the prospective buyer, and most important, the buildings have no historic designation that would offer any protection, unquote. Attempts by folks in the neighborhood to put the brakes on the demolition of the current buildings, the redevelopment area designation, and the likely development of housing by Herring Properties seem on the surface to be motivated by these homeowners' desire to dictate how other property owners, the seminary and Herring Properties, utilize their own property, full stop. I just don't see on what basis they should be allowed to exert such control. Mr. Herring is quoted in the TAP article as saying, quote, this will include market rate housing, affordable housing to the community, and a new site in downtown that has never been on the tax rolls. It will provide approximately $750,000 of revenue per annum in new real estate tax revenue to the town, unquote. In addition to the other revenue generated by residents of the new housing, which will be part of a, quote, walkable community within close proximity to the downtown, unquote. Princeton should welcome this kind of redevelopment in our town. Thank you, Carol Golden, 575 Snowden Lane. Okay, so those are all the comments on this topic. I thank everybody for being part of the discussion tonight and taking the time to share your viewpoints with all of us. Next up on the agenda are a number of public hearings on ordinances. The first hearing is on ordinance 22-13 of the Municipality of Princeton, amending Article 6, sewer connection fees of Chapter B34, sanitary sewer system of the municipal code. So if we could get a motion in a second, and then we'll have the hearing. David has the motion. Mia has the second. Thank you very much. Okay, council questions or comments to start this off? Okay. Does someone want to just summarize what we're doing here? Whether that's council or staff?
Jim?
The mayor and council, the ordinance that before you is to modify the sewer connection fee based on the appropriate calculation. There has been some historical review of how the calculation has been made in the past, and this ordinance in front of you has been vetted thoroughly by finance and by the sewer committee. and has been found to be in conformance with both state law and the appropriate financial obligations of the municipality in terms of taking into consideration capital improvements and the proposed improvements that will be made over the next 10 years. So this is an adjustment from last year. It actually reduces the fee, but also modifies the method that we're using to bring it into conformance with the state requirements and establish a more equitable and consistent process for future years as well. So staff recommends approval of the ordinance.
Good. Thank you, Jim. Okay, I'm sorry, Michelle.
I just want to make a quick comment that I really appreciate the fact that we have found a way to incentivize a laundromat, since that's, and we put that in the category of affordable housing and looking at the need for that for our economically disadvantaged population. I think it's really important, and I really appreciate the special effort there. So thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out, Michelle. David is the winner of reading the email that came in. I don't see any hands up. So David, why don't we read that email and then we'll see if there's any other public comment.
Here goes. This is from Barbara Matthias Kaiser. And she says, "Good evening, council. My husband and I own the property at 115, 119 Mountain Ave. We are currently building an ADU on the back half of this 1/2 acre lot. We were extremely shocked when we received the Princeton sewer connection fee of $10,982.25 for this extremely sustainable build. We feel this is rather exorbitantly high for such a small size, super water efficient, low sewer generating build. I have thus followed the connection fee issue with interest in the hope it may possibly be reduced, and Zoom attended the meeting of Princeton Sewer Council on May 13th, 2022. Kevin Von Heist made his excellent presentation on that day, showing, among other issues, that Princeton's actual tabulated daily sewer water production was 137 gallons per day for a single family 3-bedroom house, the average, instead of the Department of Environmental Protection's determined 300 gallons per day. I was very pleased to hear of the proposed sewer connection fee adjustment to $7,940 for our project, or $26.47 per gallon for other size housing construction units. Now, in the adjusted version of Ordinance 2202-13 being presented for public discussion, council vote today, the numbers are wildly different again. $12,110.87 is the new proposed connection fee, and the gallon price has swung up again to $40.37 per gallon. Why? Why is the NJDEP projected daily use of 300 gallons per day being applied instead of Princeton's actual factually calculated amount of 137 gallons per day? Why now a connection fee of even more than $12,000? We don't think this is a good idea for Princeton for the following reasons. This will have a considerable negative impact on smaller builds, such as ADUs, for property owners, who typically will have more limited budgets than big developers. Assuming these builds still happen, such a connection fee would swallow so much money that could be applied better elsewhere. For example, implementing sustainable features besides the water sense measures, solar panels, super good insulation, ERVs, triple glazed windows, etc. All those much vaunted sustainable Princeton goals. If a small house is built at all, developers will aim for builds as large as possible to improve the expenses per square foot ratio. And there will still be no new affordable houses for that much valued missing middle population that Princeton professes to promote. Instead, we fear it will be
I'm sorry. Hey, David, I'm sorry. Yeah. We have the timer on. Is this just about done because the time is up.
2 more sentences.
Okay, thank you.
We fear it will be more McMansions all around, so much more damaging to climate and natural resources and providing so very little support for a more cohesive community. We think this would be a terrible loss for Princeton and a terrible wasted chance to positively impact building right. We hope you'll reconsider and at least reinstate the fee schedule of the original ordinance 2022-13, maybe at least for ADUs.
So I'm going to answer this because I've been very, very involved with getting to the bottom of this. And I can say to Barbara that I'm very sympathetic as someone who was the leading proponent of the ADU ordinance. So obviously I'm a strong supporter of ADUs, but the issue is that the 137 gallons Barbara has gotten part of the picture, but not the full picture. The 137 gallons is what happens when it leaves your house. Because our system is in such bad shape with a tremendous amount of I&I, by the time it gets to Stony Brook, we are paying as a town almost, I think it is basically the 300 gallons. So from an environmental sustainability standpoint, what we are doing now is unsustainable. And what Barbara happened to sit in on was a presentation by our attorneys at the Sewer Operating Committee, which probably should not have had public attendance because it was the preliminary results of their investigation into the sewer connection fees. It didn't take into account the historic relationship between Princeton and Stony Brook, in which we were one of the first towns involved with building their infrastructure. And so we are able to charge for it's sort of the people who come after contribute to the infrastructure. And I am not the most, it is a very complicated legal issue in which our attorneys have spent, and the finance department. There's been a great deal of time spent on this issue, but suffice to say that the number that we have landed on is the number that we have to charge. And it is actually more sustainable in the long run, because if we don't fix our sewer system, if we don't have enough money to fix our sewer system, and if we are shortchanging ourselves on the connection fees, then we, all suffer in terms of our annual user rates. But I did want to give Barbara a glimmer of hope, which is that we had to go ahead and move forward with this legislation because we needed to set the connection fees. But we did make an allowance for the laundromat, and we can look into making allowances for other other situations in town, for example, ADUs, or that we would want to give them a break on the connection fees. But we would have to, it's sort of the same issue as the flag. You have to think about, if you're going to make an allowance for one, where are you going to draw the line? So we really have to put some thought into that. Anyway, I'm very sympathetic. I wish that Barbara and other people who are creating ADUs did not have to pay such a high sewer connection fee. But overall, in terms of the financial and infrastructural well-being of the town, as well as the legally, what we're supposed to charge legally, in keeping with state ordinances, this is where we land.
Thank you, Mia. All right, David, and then I want to get to, there's a member of the public with their hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a really brief follow-up to what Mia was saying about ways to help ADUs have a reduced connection fee specifically. And this relates actually to our next ordinance hearing. One of the requirements in the AD ordinance stipulates that every dwelling unit has to have a separate connection to the sanitary sewer system. And we understand why staff and the building department were advocating for that, but we are committed to looking into whether there are ways to make, sort of outdoor connections where the two sewers would come together before they go into the street to connect to the sewer main, which could then be the basis for doing an ADU without having a new sewer connection fee. So we're interested in trying to address it in that way.
Thank you, David. All right, Adam, we have a hand up from the public. Could you bring that person in, please?
Yes, Mayor, bringing over FPA.
This is Frank Arminante. I live at 28 Witherspoon Street, plus I have a company there. But this is concerning a lot of discussions about the sewer connection laterals at Witherspoon Street, which is in redevelopment. I'm only interested in knowing, I've read a lot about they were going to do it, but I haven't heard lately the timing on it. So all I'm interested in, because I want to make sure that my lateral at the Alchemist and Barrister is correct, because I know I have a problem there and I don't want to miss this new lateral connection that I've read about for many months now. If anyone can help me on the timing of it, I would appreciate it.
Right. So Frank, we'll have somebody get in touch with you. Right now, we're in the middle of a public hearing on an ordinance. So, but we have our engineering staff, our deputy engineer our assistant engineer is on the call. So we'll make sure that he follows up with you or somebody from engineering will.
All right. Thank you very much. I did speak to Jim, but I forgot to call him. I should have called him. Sorry about that.
All good. Thanks, Frank. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other comments on this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Dawn, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Pearl-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Braga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, ordinance 2022-14. An ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regarding accessory structures and accessory dwelling units, modifying the definitions of attic and floor area, and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Could we have a motion and a second? David has the motion. Michelle has the second. Thank you very much. I see our zoning officer, Derek Bridger, is on the call. Derek, do you want to comment and just give us a brief summary of what we're doing here?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to. We're just basically cleaning up and harmonizing the existing accessory dwelling unit ordinance. The former borough had different requirements than the former township. So we've harmonized that portion, and we've done some additional enhancements. If you don't have a basement, you get some additional storage area and bike storage area. And we've looked at the FAR, and there's a couple loopholes we've tried to address with this latest addition. That's a broad brush. I think if you have any questions, I'd be glad to address them.
Okay, thank you, Derek.
Sure.
Any council questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none. Do we have any comments from the, I'm sorry.
I actually would like to make a comment. This is it's a little bit more than just a harmonization. This is a modification to the ADU ordinance in response to the perception that some of the ADUs being built did not fit the size and the price point of what we had in mind when we passed the ordinance. And when we passed the ordinance, we did acknowledge that we were sort of out front of experimenting with certain aspects. We used the model AARP ordinance as our guide, but we also noted that every town is different, and you can't know when you make policy, how it's actually going to play out when it's implemented. And we promised our constituents that we would continue to monitor how the ordinance played out in practice, and how it played out was with the number of structures that were really more in the category of being duplexes rather than accessory dwelling units. And they took advantage of or utilized what Derek referred to as some loopholes in our code. So this is something in which there's been quite a bit of discussion internally about how to tweak the ordinance to make sure that the ADUs that are being constructed are in fact accessory, and that they fill a need in terms of size and price that is, loosely characterized as missing middle. And I just wanted to make that point because we will continue to monitor this ordinance and how it plays out. And if we have to make further modifications, we will.
Thank you, Mia. So I would say this does help address size and loopholes. I don't know how our ordinance is going to address pricing, because that's not something that we can control. And I think the pricing that I've seen so far is probably higher than we had hoped for, but such is life. The market does.
With the idea that in general, you charge less for less space, although in Princeton, that's not necessarily the case. So unfortunately.
Yep. Okay. Let me just see if we have any public comment, and then we'll just jump back to council and staff. Anybody from the public wishes to comment on this one? Okay. Adam, can we bring in Michael?
Yes, bringing him over.
Michael Floyd, 64 Harris Road. Being one of those people that had some concerns in the past. One, I wish you had done a little bit of the report that, assessment of how it was going, and shared some details with us before you revised the ADU ordinance. I understand the need to get this revised without too much delay because of the loopholes, and get those closed. But that being as it may, I noticed the changes, read it. I think it's some good changes. I know there's also been some changes regarding low mod and some incentives put in. I do have a question on one aspect. You've moved away from the hard 800 square foot max, which I think is good. I have mixed feelings about, maybe because I'm a zoning board member, of leaving it open-ended of the greater of the 25% of the main building, or whatever the two stipulations, what was it, 1,000? Because there are a lot of large houses in Princeton, and I didn't know if you discussed that, had any reservations regarding, if someone puts an ADU on a large lot that has 12,000 square foot house, 25% is a 3,000 square foot ADU. There's good points, bad points. I don't know how you monitor that, how it doesn't get turned into a greater than, 3-room space. Did that get discussed through, and can you explain your logic in going to the greater of 25% of a unknown base and not restricting it?
Okay. All right, Michael, let me see if we get you an answer. I don't know, Derek or Justin, do one of you want to address that? Or
Yeah, I mean, it is something we wrestled with. We feel that the main control is the habitable rooms. It's 3 habitable rooms. So if you want to have a 3,000 square foot house with 3 habitable rooms, I guess you could do that. there's always outliers. But I think, we try to give people flexibility and to also make it livable for a family, and that's where we ended up on it. But there always be people with big lots and a big house. And if they can fit the ADU in within the existing FAR for the zone, then, hopefully the site can accommodate it. We haven't seen that many applications like that. I would say the majority are around that 800 square foot mark, which, I think the prices aren't where we would like them to be, but it's a market thing. And there's not a lot of 800 square foot houses for sale in Princeton. So it just adds another element to the housing mix in town. And hopefully it gives people opportunities to get housing in town that they wouldn't have before. They're not all being sold. Some are being rented. So, we're seeing a whole mix, and it's been a successful program so far. And there seems to be an appetite for it. So we'll have to monitor it and see how it goes. But
Yeah, I hope it has been successful, except for the ones that did the loophole. But, take your word on that. As I say, you haven't produced any type of report, and I'm more looking at David since he promised it. But yeah, I agree going over the 800, definitely. I'm sure you wrestled with it. I wrestled with it as I looked at the greater than with the 25 no floor. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
Did you want to answer, David? Because I
did. I just wanted to point out that particular provision is not a change in this version.
Right.
That was in the original ADU ordinance. This is, intended to correct problems that we were having, and that's not a problem that we were having. People coming in with the 3,000 square foot ADU. So it's not saying it couldn't happen, but this ordinance has been in place for this period of time, and that's not a kind of application that we're seeing.
Okay, good.
And I just wanted to say, Michael, to your question about what we were thinking, the idea is that we're doing what we can to try to get away from the McMansionization of the town. And so the idea was, out in former township areas where there are large lots and large houses, we would still rather see, a slightly less large house and maybe a medium, it's just the idea of trying to provide more housing that's less supersized. And we did talk about what motivates people to do this. And, that's a longer discussion. I'd, be happy to share with you. But as David said, it hasn't really been an issue, I think, for the reasons when we originally discussed it in terms of our analysis of motivations and, but I did want to point out that that you mentioned that one change here is the bonus of 1,000 square feet for or 30% for an affordable deed restricted unit that, and I touched on this at the planning board, that we have had pretty encouraging outreach from a number of our affordable housing community partners like Princeton Community Housing, who are interested in creating a network of affordable units throughout the town, which is something that we consider very positive because it's not a bunch of a housing project. It's units that are integrated into both the design fabric and also the economic and the socioeconomic fabric of the town. And also there have been some individuals who do have very large lots and who are very, comfortable and are motivated to create an affordable unit on their housing lot in perpetuity. And we're really excited to encourage that type of positive, community-minded approach from our residents. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Mia. Thank you, Michael. Okay, do we have any other members of the public that want to comment on this ordinance? All right. Any other staff or council comments? Seeing none. Dawn, can we do a roll call on this, please?
Earl Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-16, an ordinance by the municipality of Princeton regulating traffic movement, loading zones and parking on Chamber Street, and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1964. I think this just makes legal what we're doing on, well, there's a deadline as to how long the temporary one-way street that we put in place, allowing for that legally, is about to expire. So we need to do it by ordinance before that expires. Anyway, is there a motion on this? Thank you, Michelle. Leighton's got the second. Council questions or comments? All right, any public questions or comments on this? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Dawn, can we do a roll call vote again?
Ms. Peron-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-17, ordinance appropriating $960,000 from the sewer connection fees for various improvements and equipment in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey. Is there a motion on this? Thank you, David. Mia's got the second. Okay. Any council questions or comments before I go to the public? Jim, do you want to just tell us what we're spending $960,000 on? Do you know?
To be honest, I do not know the specifics of this ordinance, Mr. Mayor. Andrew Philippi, our sewer engineer, would know that. And Deanna Stockton would know it, but she's on vacation this week.
Yeah, I have. Oh, Sandy?
Yeah, I think I can probably help out on this. So the sewer connection fees that we were just discussing a little while ago, these funds build up over the course of a year. And so we use them for various improvements related to the sewer operating. And in this particular case, we're using this for miscellaneous facility repairs, a sanitary sewer evaluation survey, sewer maintenance equipment, a jet vac truck, a backhoe, air compressor, and trailers.
Thank you. I had my notes on that with my agenda package from when we introduced it, which of course I do not have with me. So thank you.
It's okay.
Much appreciated. Mia.
I just want to say that this is related to the earlier ordinance that we have, decades worth of deferred maintenance on our sewer, and we need every penny, so we can't afford to be cutting the connection rates because the users and the people who live here, we are paying a lot for the processing of water that is not actual waste. It's just stormwater that is leaking into the sewer system. And this outlay, although I can't speak to the technical specifics, although I've learned a lot about sewers, it's too technical for me. But I know that it's absolutely needed. And I'm very excited that we're finally getting on this program of sewer maintenance, and taxpayers will see a real difference once we start to fix our aging infrastructure. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Mia. Any other council comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? Okay, so I forget. Did I ask somebody to move this? Did we move this already?
We moved.
We did, right? Okay. Just want to make sure. All right, Dawn, can we do the roll call, please?
Ms. Peron-Lambros,
Yes.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-18, bond ordinance providing for various sewer improvements in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey, appropriating $5,100,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $5,100,000 bonds or notes of Princeton to finance the cost thereof. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Mia has the second. Council questions or comments? The detail is on page 168 of the agenda package, and we are going to spend just over $1 million on storm drainage improvements, and a little over $3 million on repairs and improvements to pumping stations, equipment and related wear parts. And then another $1 million on trunk line rehabilitation. So to echo what Mia said earlier, all this is an effort that it's going to be a multi-year effort. So, I mean, overall, I think it's going to take about 10 years to do all the work that needs to be done. And little by little, people will start to see that it's going to make a difference. But at the end of 10 years, it should make a significant difference.
And Mayor, can I just make a comment as well? So this ordinance does not require a down payment because we are hoping to go for financing through the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank. We've met with them a couple of times. They have some really great programs right now where we have the ability to borrow from them with at least 50% interest-free, possibly up to 75% interest-free, depending on how we structure the debt schedules when we do the financing with them. So we're really excited about moving forward with the iBank.
Sandy, thank you very much for adding that in. Michelle, and then Leighton.
Thank you. I was just going to ask if we were going to use iBank funding for that, because I know I was on one of those early calls. So that's really great news. You know, with our AAA rating, we think, you know, but there's nothing like getting 0% financing, especially where the interest rates are going these days. So that's terrific. There's no, I was kind of hoping there might even be some principal forgiveness programs there, but there may be still some grants out there that we can find, but that's really good news. So thank you.
Leighton.
Thanks, Mayor. Sandy, I just want to thank you for giving me a third grade math lesson earlier this week on everything that you just went over. And I also just want to let the public know that these expenditures will be for a duration in the 3 areas of 20, 15, and 20 years. So this money not only will be well spent, it will last us for a long time for sustainability. And as Michelle said, and Sandy told me when we met last but not least, the rate that we're borrowing this money at with our rating from the iBank is akin to we could not borrow this money because we would be foolish not to take a gift horse and look a gift horse in the mouth. So thanks, Sandy, for the good work.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Leighton. Any other council comments or questions? Any public comment or questions on this ordinance? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Dawn, can we have a roll call vote on this also?
Ms. Peron-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance 2022-19, bond ordinance providing for various capital improvements in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey, appropriating $15,095,218, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $13,318,035 bonds or notes of Princeton to finance part of the cost thereof. Is there a motion? Thank you, David. And Mia's got the second. And if you have the agenda package open, pages 176 through 181 list all the detail, but this is items for the police department, for IT department, for the rec department, for the health department, for the engineering department, for the infrastructure department, for emergency services, for the fire department. So we are spending money as we should on all of our different departments because we need to run the town. So thank you. Any public comment on this ordinance? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Dawn, can we do a roll call vote again?
Peron-Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-20, bond ordinance providing for acquisition of scooters for parking enforcement in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey, appropriating $152,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $152,000 bonds or notes of Princeton to finance the cost thereof. Is there a motion on that? David, thank you. Leighton's got the second. Council questions or comments? Michelle?
Can maybe Jim or Bernie or someone give us a little background as to, the cost of these? And I know that there needs to be efficiency with the battery operated, that, they can have a long charge and that they can have heating and cooling and all. But can you give us a little background about these specific scooters?
Bernie, do you have any
I
specific?
think I can jump in.
Sandy.
This is for 3 scooters for parking enforcement. I know earlier this year, council approved a purchase for a gas-powered enforcement scooter because the ones that they were using were basically falling apart. This is authorizing the funding for 3 additional scooters that will be electric operated.
David?
Yeah, I just wanted to share because we all did receive an email from a member of the public who's one of my Doty members of the Vision Zero Task Force. So I really want to respect his concern about the expense here. But Michelle and I in particular have been really focused on the total cost of ownership for our vehicles. And one of the things that you have to keep in mind, these are a little bit more expensive, not a whole lot. I think they're about 30% more expensive than the gas-powered one that we ordered earlier this year. But when you take into account repair expenses over the lifetime of these vehicles, electric vehicles have much lower repair expenses. Consumer Reports did a study recently that showed on average about half the cost of repairs for gas-powered vehicles. And the fuel costs are much, much less, about a quarter of the fuel costs for a gas-powered vehicle with the comparable efficiency of EVs versus gas-powered. So if you look at how much we will spend over the lifetime of these vehicles, I'm convinced they're not only better for the environment, but actually better for the pocketbook of the municipality.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Thank you, David. Mia?
So it all sounds good, and obviously I'd love to have everything electric, but I felt that Mr. Lyons made some good points. And I'm just wondering if you can respond more specifically to his points. I mean, he says, cars such as the Chevy Spark and Toyota Prius and numerous others could serve the same function as scooters and additionally be available for normal road use as the town's needs dictate. He says there are subcompact cars available of narrow width comparable to the scooters.
These are 3-wheel scooters. I don't want to go too far because, really Tim Vanetta, the fleet manager, is the expert on that stuff. But these are 3-wheel vehicles. The maneuverability is just, there's no comparison. They can essentially turn on a dime compared to any 4-wheeled small, sedan that you would purchase instead. I just don't think that that Tim would even consider using a regular car, and they're used full time. I mean, these vehicles are used 12 hours a day. They're used as much as we have our meters being enforced. So it's not like we need them or would be able to use them for other purposes when they're not being used.
But did we see the numbers over the lifetime? Was that actually presented? Did someone review that?
So I happened to go on the Chevrolet website today. The Spark is no longer available. You could buy used ones, and at the pricing that Marty mentions, you could get used ones maybe in that range. I think the 2017 models were like 17,000, 15,000 in that range, but there's no new ones. But the comparable car now, I guess that Chevy does, is the Bolt, I think, which cost, or on average, depending what, there's 2 models of it, cost about 35,000 each. And the Prius, I didn't have a chance to look at the Prius, but I don't believe you're going to get a Prius for anything less than probably that same dollar amount.
And
So
hybrid vehicles do not have any of the repair cost savings that full EV vehicles do, because you have the gas powered, the the oil filter changes and the tune-ups and all that stuff that you have with a full gas-powered vehicle. So you don't get any of those repair cost savings. I can't say that I've done that Tim or I did that analysis, Mia, but the point that I'm trying to make is these are over the life of the vehicle going to be very comparable. Might they cost $500 more, over the life of the vehicle than using a gas-powered scooter would? It's possible, but the climate benefits, I think, have to also come into our consideration.
And are they, but I guess I'm just saying, like, I thought this was a very compelling email, and it would be, when we have a vote like this, it would be useful for us to be able to quantify that and say, here are the climate benefits, here are the costs, just because it is such a, it is so much more expensive.
Right. So the reason the research I was doing was about electric sedans versus electric gas-powered vehicles. And the study that I was looking at looked at a 200,000 mile lifespan of the car. And over that time period, the fuel savings was, using today's prices for electricity versus today's prices for gasoline. Actually, a month ago's prices, now the savings would be even greater, but it was in the mid 20,000, like $23,000, $25,000 of savings purely in fuel costs over the life of the car. It wouldn't be that, I'm not saying these vehicles are going to last 200,000 miles, but if they did, it would be the same thing because, it's X miles per gallon. So
yeah,
that's the scale, and the repair costs over the life of a vehicle, according to this Consumer Reports study, was about $10,000 for a gas-powered vehicle and about $5,000 for electric, which included replacement of the batteries when they died. So again, that's pushing into the $30,000 range. It's almost like you pay for the vehicle with the savings, not to mention the environmental benefits.
Right. So, Michelle, if I just ask one question, Sandy or Jim, where are we on the building out the infrastructure to actually charge these vehicles?
Mr. Mayor, we're still in the process of negotiating charging stations at Witherspoon Street. I'm not 100% sure how these particular vehicles are charged, but they would not be housed at Witherspoon Street. They would be housed over at the Harrison Street garage. So
Tim says these can trickle charge.
Yeah, plugged in.
They plug into a regular outlet. They do not need.
I would just like to add, though, that as David alluded to earlier in his comments, that these are specific vehicles for the specific needs of our parking enforcement people. Normal automobile type, our parking enforcement people need to be able to maneuver through traffic, park adjacent to parked vehicles, make U-turns a lot of times, and also be able to get in and out.
I get that. I'm convinced on that score, Jim. I just want to make sure we're not, checking the box on, oh, we're doing something environmental, but it actually, it really doesn't have that much of a benefit. It's much more expensive, but we get to say, oh, wow, we're doing something that's sustainable. And it would be easier, I think when something like this comes to a vote, it shouldn't just be anecdotal or speculative. It should be like, here are the actual, here are the comparable costs to a gas-powered vehicle. Here's what the cost of this over the lifetime. Here's what we're saving, because otherwise we're basically, agreeing to this expenditure based on what we think our instinct is, but we don't, it's just, puts us in a difficult position.
Okay, Sandy has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one other point. This is just authorizing the funding. It will come back to council again when we award the contract to purchase these. And I think at that point, me and David, will see the analysis of what the appropriate vehicle is,
Okay.
for parking enforcement.
Thank you. Thank
And I
you.
would also emphasize, we need to see the carbon savings as well, because I didn't talk about that at all, but it's significant. I mean, yes, gas-powered vehicles can be efficient. Maybe a gas-powered scooter gets 80 miles to the gallon, but it's still not as good as, as zero carbon emissions. And we have to keep in mind that as the grid gets cleaner and cleaner in New Jersey, which it will do, these vehicles will go to zero emissions. Right now, they're being powered by the grid, so we do have a little bit of fossil fuel in our grid, but it's many, many times better than a comparable gas-powered vehicle.
Okay, thank you, David. Leighton.
Thank you, Mayor. Listening to my colleague, Mia Sachs, I agree, I think, with the direction that she's going in. I see no reason why, given the compelling email that we received today, no good reason why we wouldn't put together a cost-benefit analysis and present it to the public so that they would know, as we should know, why we are spending $152,000 for 3 vehicles and why that's a wise choice and a good decision. We talk about smart growth and wise choices. Let's prove that what we're doing is the right thing to do.
Thanks.
And I'm fine with, it sounds like we'll have an opportunity for that when it comes back to council, and I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Okay.
Good.
Do we have any public comment on this ordinance? All right, see no hands up. We'll close the public hearing. Dawn, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Pearl Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga, Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2022-21, bond ordinance providing for the replacement of the cooling tower and circulator motors at the library in and by Princeton in the county of Mercer, New Jersey, appropriating $388,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $368,600 bonds or notes of Princeton to finance part of the cost thereof. Is there a motion? Leighton's going to make the motion. Is there a second? Okay. If there's no second, then this item does not move forward. Okay, for lack of a second, the item does not move forward. Okay, next on the agenda is an ordinance introduction. Ordinance 2022-22, an ordinance by Princeton creating a new historic preservation overlay district to be known as the Prospect Avenue Historic District and amending the code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Public hearing, July 11th, 2022. Is there a motion to introduce that? Mia, thank you. Is there a second? Michelle, thank you. Okay, it's a roll call vote. Dawn?
Pearl Lambros,
Yes.
Niedergang, Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to the resolutions. 22-215, resolution of Mayor and Council of Princeton awarding professional services and software services agreement to Davy Resource Group, Inc. in connection with the municipal tree survey for a not to exceed cost of $125,000. Is there a motion on that? Thank you, Michelle. David has the second. Questions or comments? Michelle?
Is there going to be a little background? I know in the past I had seen the original estimate was about half as much for the for this tree survey, and I know we had postponed it during COVID for lack of wanting to spend the money. I know it's an important thing to do for the Shade Tree Commission. I don't know if I don't think Taylor's here, but is there any background as far as what's proposed for this resolution?
Go ahead, Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, I know that the original request that they put in for their budget was 75,000. So this price has definitely gone up over what we expected earlier in the year. However, I know that Taylor has also just submitted a grant application, a forestry grant for an additional $50,000. So that would supplement the cost of this project as well.
I see. Is there something additional in this project? Maybe it incorporates GIS or something that the original Davy survey?
I believe that it does. Yeah, because this is the same company we have used in the past.
I knew it was Davy. I just didn't. I
Right.
just remembered it being half as. I remember it being that 70,000.
I will say that I had some back and forth with Taylor about it this afternoon, and it does, the cost per tree has gone up significantly. So while there are some things in it, like 2 years of software, and training on the software for our staff and interface with the GIS, all those kinds of things, I think the bulk of the increase is just a unit cost increase per tree. I can easily imagine that this is one of those areas where the Great Resignation is making it harder to hire people, and that their costs have gone up as well.
Okay.
Hopefully we can get some grant funding.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other council questions or comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody in favor. 22-216, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing change order number 1 in the amount of $215,111.14 for improvements to Linden Lane and Spruce Street. Is there a motion? David, thank you. Is there a second? Michelle, thank you. Any council questions or comments? All right, seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. 22-217, resolution awarding contract to First Onsite Property Restoration in connection with water service break at 237 North Harrison Street in Princeton, not to exceed amount of $25,000. Is there a motion on that? David, thank you. Mia's got the second. Well, no one anticipates the water service breaking, but the water service pipe broke and flooded the downstairs of the building. Any questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's everybody. 22-218, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton awarding lease/use agreement for modular equipment for office use by Department of Public Works for a not to exceed amount of $32,400. David has the motion. Is there a second? Michelle has the second. And David, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment. This is for an extension on the trailer that we use we've been using since 2012 for our Office for Public Works. I was happy to see that it can be terminated early, and I definitely hope we have a better solution in less than 3 years, which is the time limit that this is good for.
That would be grand if we do.
Absolutely. Agree.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this one? All right. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that's everybody. The next item, which was 22-219, is the one we mentioned at the beginning of the meeting that needs to be reworded, and that'll come back to us at a future meeting. So we go to 22-220, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing award of agreement for procurement of technology solutions from SHI International, OpenGov workflow software platform, and Zen City public engagement software pursuant to Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Contract number 081419-SHI for the not to exceed amount of $100,838.09. Mia has the motion. Is there a second? Michelle's got the second. Jeff, you pop back on. Are you?
I just wanted to mention Christina Rothman-Iliff and Deanna Stockton put a lot of work into this. They're not on the call tonight, but I just wanted to give them a shout out. This software is going to revolutionize the way we deliver services to the town. I just want to mention one constant complaint we get is just the communication and transferring certain permits and applications between departments. OpenGov is going to streamline that. And then Zen City is going to allow us to solicit input on certain projects that engineering and health do a lot. So I also want to thank Sandy on helping us get creative with the funding sources. We put our heads together and utilized a lot of grant funding to try to make this work.
Yeah.
And I was about to raise my hand and say all of that, Jeff, and thank you to you too. And this has been 2 years in the making, and I really think it will be one of those solutions that will help both staff and also our residents to have quicker, more efficient access to information. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. It's very exciting. I had one more thing, and one of the things that we've talked about with the business partnership is exactly, the idea of being easier to use, but friendlier, and this is very resourceful. This is going to make all kinds of permitting and applications and event permits and everything, the application process so much faster. And I think that, we see a big price tag, but I think in the long run, you have a lot of staff saving because you have a lot of staff time that will be saved. And I think that's really a great cost-effective way to go about it. In Zen City, I'm interested to see how that's going to help us communicate. I mean, how many times do we hear our residents say, I didn't know that this was happening, I didn't have input, or I wasn't able to attend a meeting, but this will give us another ability to outreach in a more modern technological fashion. So I think it's great. Appreciate all the effort. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Jeff, thanks for hanging out so long.
Thank you.
And good evening.
Thanks,
Hopefully you're done. All right, 22-221, resolution of Mayor and Council of Princeton and approving an agreement with Leckington Advisors LLC as a consultant to provide ongoing support for the administration of the CDBG grant for the program year 2022, not to exceed $19,500. Leighton, thank you for the motion. Is there a second? Mia, thank you. Jeff, you want to?
Mark Leckington has been working on the CDBG grant through affordable housing in Murray and Fullaway. This money comes directly out of the CDBG funding.
Yeah, this is and Mark's very good. Obviously not me, that Mark Leckington is very, very good at what he does. Very helpful in this process. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. All right, 22-222, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton rejecting bids for 2022 tree removal project and authorizing re-advertising for the bids. All three bidders had mistakes in their documents, so we had to reject all three bids. Is there a motion? Leighton, thank you. Michelle's got the second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-223, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton dissolving the Economic Development Committee. Michelle had mentioned that early on in the meeting. Is there a motion? Michelle, thank you. Is there a second? Mia, thank you. Question, comments, Michelle?
I'll just make a comment again. The Economic Development Committee has been a crucial committee to help resolve troubleshoot issues during these past few years. I've had the privilege to chair the committee, and I think that this is just a moving on to the next phase when now we'll have an Economic Development Committee as part of the Princeton Business Partnership. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping that all the same great, valuable stakeholders and business leaders will also be part of this, and hopefully more people too. So anyway, just wanted to thank everyone once again.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda is next. There's 17 items on the consent agenda. Is everyone content with all 17 staying on the consent agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? David, thank you. Is there a second? Michelle, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the consent agenda is passed. David,
I move to adjourn.
thank you, David. Is there a second? Thank you, Leighton. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, everybody, thank you very much for watching the meeting, being part of the meeting, and a good night to all.
Right.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Night, everybody.